Welcome to the Tech Vibe Radio One Mic Stand. This is Jonathan Kirsting with the Pittsburgh Technology Council and, of course, Tech Vibe Radio. And today's guests, I'm just really pumped to talk to today. This is one of these companies that I was saying before we hit the record button can only happen in Pittsburgh. A company called ALung, and this is a company that has been, I think, out since 1997 almost. And they have just been honing this crazy cool road with just an awesome medical solution that's literally saving people's lives. It's the Hemolung. And I've got the two fundamental guys here with me today to talk about it and also how this device has been used to help folks suffering from COVID and to talk about the next generation that's going to be coming out as well too. So glad to have Pete DeComo here and Bill Federspiel. Guys, thank you for taking the time to be on the One Mic Stand. I do appreciate it.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Absolutely. So Bill, let's start with some introductions. I know you were the first man on the scene when it came
so
to
speak. Yeah, I was a lot younger at the time.
Yeah.
I am a professor of bioengineering at the University of Pittsburgh, and I run the medical devices laboratory, which actually is in the McGowan Institute of Regenerative Medicine. I was recruited to University of Pittsburgh about in 1995, with expressly to start up an artificial lung laboratory and collaborate with a cardiothoracic surgeon that they had just recruited by the name of Brack Hatler. And, really that's how this whole thing started for me.
Very, very cool. I mean, and then 23 years later,
Yeah.
You're probably like, oh my goodness, what did I get myself into?
Yeah.
I know one of the pivotal moments of the company was bringing Pete DeComo in, because Pete was one of those guys where he knew how to build and scale life sciences companies.
Yes.
And, so Pete, what attracted you to say, yeah, I'm going to take this thing on? And that was like 11 years ago, right?
Bill, and you remember, of course, but I was a founder and CEO of a company prior to ALung called Renal Solutions, and we had a fairly successful exit. But what most people don't know, two things that most people don't know, is I started my early career as a respiratory therapist at UPMC Federspiel, and I worked in critical care, and I was on the School of Medicine faculty in critical care, teaching therapists, nurses, physicians how to use ventilators and respiratory assisted devices in the treatment of respiratory failure. But even maybe more appropriate to ALung is that this is my third, what we call extracorporeal company, meaning a device which takes blood out of the body, treats it, and puts it back into the body. I was a COO of the first FDA cleared liver dialysis technology. And from there, I went on to start Renal Solutions, which had a successful exit. And then some of my investors came over to ALung at a very challenging time for the company.
Right.
And I was about to retire, and they said, Pete, come on over here. It'll only take a couple of years, and then you can go retire.
A couple of years. What were you thinking, Pete? What were you thinking?
Yeah, so it's been 11 years, but I have to tell you, with a respiratory therapy background and with working with Bill and continuing our collaborative relationship with the McGowan Institute, while it's been challenging at times, it's also been very rewarding.
I can only imagine. I mean, at the end of the day, you are literally saving people's lives. So give our listeners and our viewers just an overview of the Hemolung and a very general view of how it works as far as it goes. I think it's just very unique when it comes to taking carbon dioxide out of the blood, allowing people to breathe easier and give their lungs a rest, right?
Yeah, I'll let Pete do that because he
Okay.
does a much better job speaking to the layperson on that.
So, the device is in effect an artificial lung. The actual name of the company, ALung, stands for artificial lung.
Right.
Bill, don't take offense, but we didn't invent the artificial lung. The artificial lung's been around for quite a while. What we've really focused on is a very simple, safe, and effective device that focuses on carbon dioxide removal. So, as a byproduct of normal metabolism, you and I produce carbon dioxide, and when we breathe normally, we inhale atmospheric gas. We bring in some oxygen, 21% oxygen, which is sufficient to oxygenate our bodies. And when we exhale that carbon dioxide that we produce as a byproduct of metabolism. Well, most artificial lungs, if not all artificial lungs, really focus on delivering high concentrations of oxygen for patients that are critically ill and need those high levels of oxygen. And it's really a rescue therapy. What Bill originally focused on was a simple, safe, and effective device for the removal of carbon dioxide. And we're really a first mover with an artificial lung to remove carbon dioxide as a primary objective. And most patients that have respiratory failure manifest themselves initially with carbon dioxide retention and a need to get that carbon dioxide out of the body. And basically what we do with our artificial lung is we connect through a catheter, either here in the jugular vein up in the neck region, into a vein, or in the groin area in the femoral vein. And we take blood from the body and we pass it through a very, very unique and differentiated artificial lung that Bill is the inventor of. We remove carbon dioxide, we put a little oxygen in, and return it back to the patient. What's different about our device is that it is a highly, highly efficient carbon dioxide removal device, more highly efficient than any other device on the market. In addition to that, we built this very unique, what we call a controller or device around the artificial lung. And what most clinicians tell us once they use it is it's different than any other device in terms of its simplicity. Most other artificial lung devices require specialized personnel like perfusionists, technicians, so on and so forth. Our device is made to use it and forget it. In other words,
right. That's so cool.
Pay attention to the patient instead of paying attention to the technology.
Right.
And that's what makes us very different as well.
You know, the company, they use the term for the device respiratory dialysis because the device operates at blood flow rates that are very similar to the dialysis treatments that are used for patients that have kidney failure. But, you know, I tell you, and I've been doing this recently, if you look at a typical dialysis machine used in the intensive care unit, it is a lot more complicated than the Hemolung device. I mean, the company and the engineers at the company did a spectacular job distilling this technology down into a device that's much easier to use and much less complicated than a dialysis device used for kidney failure patients.
Amazing. That's just absolutely amazing. I mean, this is why it has something that could be so simple, but it's doing such a complex thing. To me, it's just so cool. And so, but I got completely stoked when I saw headlines being made earlier during the COVID pandemic when people were looking at your device as a way to help people afflicted with the virus and helping them literally breathe. So tell us about how that kind of came out and how it's being used right now. I just think that's so cool.
Pete, I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, the objective of using our device all along has been to eliminate the need for a breathing tube down into your airway and then being put on a mechanical ventilator. You know, I think back to my clinical respiratory therapy days, the first thing a COPD patient would say to me after they successfully were weaned from the ventilator and had that breathing tube pulled out of their airway was, "Don't ever do that to me again."
I can only imagine. That has to be just awful, like just awful.
And they come back the next time because chronic obstructive pulmonary disease patients have sometimes multiple acute episodes in a given year, and they present back to the hospital again. And once they experience that breathing tube and that mechanical ventilator, they oftentimes come back with a do not intubate or a do not resuscitate order. And they'd rather choose end of life than have to go through that again.
Oh my God. Wow. That's just crazy.
crazy. And so what our objective is with our device and our therapy is to eliminate the need for the mechanical ventilator so that a patient doesn't have to go through all of that. Or if they're on a ventilator, protect their lungs while they're on the ventilator and get them off the ventilator sooner.
Right,
So
right.
that translates into COVID-19 as well. And so the earlier you treat a patient with our device and intervene, the greater the chance of success that you prevent further lung damage and dependency on the ventilator, and then have a very difficult time getting them off.
Right.
Having a very high mortality rate. So what's happening to these COVID-19 patients when you hear 80–90% mortality rate is that their lungs have been beat up pretty badly by the COVID virus, but also beat up pretty badly by the ventilator itself, attempting to inflate those very stiff lungs that exist with a viral infection.
So
Yeah, and I've read many accounts from patients in the lay press, like the Washington Post, which I read every day, of patients that actually had COVID-19 and were put on ventilators. And the stories they tell about their experience on the ventilator, after they come off the ventilator, they still feel the effects of having been on a ventilator for that long of a period of a time.
Wow. And so where is this being used right now? I mean, how many patients do you know have been treated with this, with the ALung device, as opposed to being intubated, or any combination thereof?
Well, we, we're not FDA approved for sale on the marketplace, but what we did is we went to the FDA as a company and a device that could assist in the treatment of patients with COVID-19.
Gotcha.
And we were issued what's called emergency use authorization. So you'll hear about this in the news with other diagnostic tests and drugs that are getting emergency use authorization. So in essence, the FDA has approved us for use during this pandemic for COVID-19 patients. However, keeping in mind that we're a clinically trial-focused company, our manufacturing capacity is very limited. So we were doing, prior to COVID-19, a large clinical trial here in the United States. And we were already installed in 34 academic medical centers across the United States.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah.
We were also just concluded conducting a trial in the United Kingdom where we were installed in 31 clinical trial sites. So we're still installed in those 61 clinical trial sites. And that's our focus for treating COVID-19 patients, because those hospitals have already been trained on our technology. Our inventory is already in those hospitals, and they're capable of treating COVID-19 patients immediately.
Gotcha. And now they have this extra tool in their arsenal to help these people, which is just amazing.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. We've also gone outside those 66 institutions.
Okay.
And we've treated patients in another 5 hospitals beyond our clinical trial sites. And we've treated many patients in the United States, and as well in the United Kingdom and Ireland also. And one of the hospitals outside of our clinical trial sites, which is called, I think it was
Palm Beach Memorial.
Palm Gardens Memorial in Miami. They called us. They had an emergency use COVID-19 patient. And the interesting story, Jonathan, they needed that technology immediately. They weren't a clinical trial site. They'd never been trained on our technology. They didn't have inventory there. 2 of our technicians jumped in a car on Saturday evening.
That's cool.
Van, I should say.
Yeah.
And drove 2 units down overnight, 17 hours, got there Monday morning, and the patient was Monday afternoon.
See, that's Pittsburgh right there, right? Yeah. Only in Pittsburgh would you load your stuff up in a van, drive it down to Florida, and save some freaking lives, man. That's the best.
Well, they were so impressed with the treatment of that patient. The patient did well that they released a story and a video to the local news down there without our knowledge, and then sent us a link of that.
Are you serious?
That video.
Oh, cool.
And it had the family, the brother, and all speaking about how our technology saved this patient and how he's done so well. And the brother was just preparing, he was just about to prepare funeral arrangements.
Oh my Lord, wow.
So it's really a touching story and an inspirational story, but it goes to show you that the technology can assist and help bridge a patient back to recovery.
Oh,
Pete, I don't know if you know this, but my wife pointed it out to me because she's born and raised Pittsburgh. I'm not, but the local reporter at that TV station down in Florida used to be a reporter at one of the Pittsburgh TV stations.
Yeah, Jonathan, you may remember him as his name was, I think he was with WTAE, and he was
okay.
Ari
something or other, yeah.
Is it Ari Lightman?
Could have been Ari Lightman, yeah.
Yeah.
Ari, yeah, something like that.
Very cool. I see that. I mean, that alone has to be worth coming out of retirement. Yeah. Fighting the good fight you've been doing for over a decade to realize that your work made that much of an impact on somebody, and that in the future it's going to be that times millions. Because I mean, I'm seeing as obviously you're going to get to these trials at some point, and this is going to be something that I know, I'm going to say it right now, I know is going to be deployed in U.S. hospitals when there's a pandemic or not. And it's going to be helping so many people. Amazing.
Well, you know, it's amazing to me for a variety of reasons, but one is having been a respiratory therapist and treating these
definitely.
And just having an intuitive feel for how the technology works and why it can be beneficial to these patients. But Bill, it's got to be super rewarding for you after 23 years of
exactly.
technology. Well, let's put it this way: it's driving me towards retirement, Pete.
Okay. I love it. So, but it keeps getting better because now you guys, there's the next generation's coming out right now, or the plans are underway. What's going on now as you're working on the next iteration of this?
Well, it's an interesting story. So as we spun that technology out to ALung, you know, I remained at the university doing research and was thinking about, okay, what's sort of the next big area I want to look into. And there was one or two groups out there that were developing wearable artificial lungs for patients that require both oxygenation and carbon dioxide removal. So we decided to go in that direction. We got a grant to develop an adult device, I think in 2013, and around 2017 or so, we got a grant to develop a pediatric version of the device, of this wearable artificial lung technology, if you will. And when I was collaborating with the pediatric cardiothoracic surgeon, when that grant started, he indicated to me, you know, and the pediatric population is so small, oftentimes the difficulty is in commercialization because the market is small, and even though the regulatory process is a little less burdensome in the pediatric population, you know, a lot of companies, you know, do not want to invest the resources to do that. And he indicated to me, you know, if this could have an important adult application, it would make things a lot easier in the end run to commercialize. So that kind of set a light bulb off on my head, and we decided to develop a modular artificial lung, that wearable one that could be used both for the adult population and the children and the pediatric population, that was identical except for a couple of minor changes. And the idea being that if you could get approval for the adult application, you know, getting approval for the pediatric application would be a lot easier because you would have already, you piggyback on it. And then the idea came to me one day about, well, maybe this would work well for low flow CO2 removal. That was a higher flow device designed for oxygenation. So we got some money from the University of Pittsburgh Innovation Institute, to do some basic bench work and animal studies to show that the device could work equally well as a low flow CO2 removal device. And we were able to demonstrate that. And so in a single device, we're really able to do the spectrum of respiratory support from these low flow CO2 removal cases like the Hemolung is treating now to patients that require perhaps more respiratory support. And the only difference, the device is the same, the only difference would be in the size of the cannula that Pete was mentioning, that would go into the neck. And so, you know, my obvious commercial partner to approach to get interested in the idea was ALung Technologies. And when we were able to demonstrate that it worked well as a low flow CO2 removal device, that's what information they needed to pull the trigger to start negotiating a license to the technology with the University of Pittsburgh.
I love it. Every time I ride my bike past your headquarters in the South Side, I look at your building, I see the ALung sign up there. I know you guys are up to some really great stuff. And today's conversation is just like totally blown my mind. And just I just love it because in Pittsburgh, our universities work closely with corporations and with it just comes all together and creates things like this. And at the end of the day, it means someone's packing up a van and driving it 17 hours down to Florida to save a life. And that to me is just such a cool story. I mean, I can't tell you how proud we are to have ALung in Pittsburgh.
And my laboratory is on the south side as well, and it's really literally a 10 or 15 minute walk from ALung Technologies.
Your neighbors, man. I love it. All the way around. I wish you guys continued success. And obviously, I mean, it seems like things are just really, really just ramping up fast for you guys. And I can't thank you enough for taking this long, hard road to get really tough products to market. It's not for everyone. You guys persevered. That is for sure.
Well, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Bill and Pete, you guys are the best.
Okay, take care.